Coming up on Chicago Bears now, my name is Harrison Graham. Is it a two-horse race between Mike McCarthy and Ben Johnson to become the next Bears head coach? One NFL insider believes that is going to be the case. I want you guys to sound off first. Who do you guys want as the next head coach of the Chicago Bears? Do you want Ben Johnson? Do you want Mike McCarthy? Do you want someone else? Let us know in the comment section down below in this video. Okay, let's go ahead and get started here. Jordan Schultz, Fox Sports NFL insider, saying yesterday that he does believe it is a two-horse race between Mike McCarthy and Ben Johnson to be the next Bears head coach. Now, he did also mention Brian Flores as a dark horse. He's going to interview tomorrow, the Vikings defensive coordinator. Just completed an interview with the Jets as well. He's also in the mix in Jacksonville, so keep an eye on that. I do want to just side note real quick on Flores. I just saw this note a second ago from Adam Schefter. Schefter said that Josh McCown, the Vikings quarterbacks coach who just got requested to do a head coach interview, I believe, with New York, will not take an OC job. That kind of dings Flores for me in terms of being a head coach candidate, because ideally he would bring Josh McCown with him to call the plays, but if he's not going to be an OC somewhere, that hurts Flores' candidacy, in my opinion, because that was a big issue in Miami. He went through 4 OCs in 3 years. So doesn't mean he can't get the job, but he would obviously have to sell Ryan Poles and ownership and Kevin Warren, whoever else, on who his offensive coordinator would be. So just kind of a side note on that as we go through this coaching search and go through this process. But we're going to focus on Ben Johnson and Mike McCarthy here. A report on McCarthy from Adam Johns dropping, I believe, yesterday as well. So McCarthy interviewed Wednesday. We knew that. He flew in private. We knew that. Team flew him in. So, he essentially skipped the first step. Didn't have to do the virtual interview, all that stuff. Heavily suggests that he'll be a finalist for this job. But also, he stayed the night in Chicago. Now, what do we make of that? Does that mean they were talking late into the night? Did they go to dinner? Did he just simply stay at a hotel somewhere before flying out the next day? Who knows, right? Like, that could mean a lot of different things when it comes to Mike McCarthy. But here's what I think is fair to say at this point. He is at or near the top of the Bears list. He is a very real, very viable candidate to be this team's next head coach to replace Matt Eberflus. I think we all have to understand that is very much a possibility between Mike McCarthy and the Chicago Bears. I also just read a report out of Dallas that they wanted him back and that they expected him back, but it did not end up working out. So this idea that Dallas ran him out of town, which I never said or believed, because you don't wait 8 days before mutually parting ways without there being some sort of discussions to make this work, is certainly interesting as well. Like, this is a guy who believes in himself, knows he's got interest, and is a viable coaching candidate not only for the Bears, but for the New Orleans Saints as well. And I still wonder if the Jets and Raiders would potentially get in the mix as well. What's next for McCarthy is that as of now, he's got an interview lined up with the New Orleans Saints next week. Now, why do I say as of now? Well, and we're going to talk about the timeline, Ben Johnson, all that stuff. What if after the weekend comes and goes, the Bears approach McCarthy after they interviewed Todd Monken, Brian Flores, etc.? They will have had most first interviews done. What if they circle back to McCarthy and they're like, hey, we think you're our guy. Let's do a second interview, and if all goes well, let's lock this thing down. I found it interesting from the beginning that he had an interview with the Bears on Wednesday and then the Saints early the next week. Like, that's a decent gap there. So I think, one, it tells me McCarthy probably wants this job. I think he wants to be the next Bears head coach. And two, that there could be a scenario where this weekend comes and goes, especially if Detroit wins, which means you're stuck waiting longer for a guy like Ben Johnson, that maybe the Bears would proceed forward with Mike McCarthy without pursuing a second interview with Ben Johnson. Now, do I think they should necessarily do that? I've said no. I think you should wait on Johnson, but there is appeal to getting a head coach locked in sooner rather than later. We'll kind of talk about that coming up here in just a moment, but I do want to get in a word from our sponsor, Game Time. Do you want to go to the national championship game between Ohio State and Notre Dame? Are you looking to go to an NFL playoff game as the postseason continues? Bulls, Blackhawks games, concerts, comedy shows. If you need to get tickets digitally, which most places do now, you got to get your tickets online. Game Time is the place to go. They have tons of awesome features, including Game Time Picks, which is a thing you can toggle on at the top of the screen when you're in the app. It's going to narrow down your search. That way you're not scrolling through thousands of tickets for certain events. It'll kind of get rid of the fluff and narrow down that search for you, which makes it easier to pinpoint the tickets that you want that are in your price range, that are in your budget. You can toggle on all-in pricing as well. That way you're not surprised when you check out at what the final price is actually going to be. Views from the seats, event cancellation protection, all of that is offered with Game Time. And their motto is last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. I can speak from experience on multiple occasions, including the college football national championship game a couple years ago. We bought our tickets like 2 hours before kickoff, got them digitally sent to us in plenty of time. No issues whatsoever. So get started with Game Time today. Download the app. Use our promo code CHATSPORTS to get $20 off your first purchase only. Terms to apply. That's code CHATSPORTS, all one word, to get started with Game Time. Trust me, you are not going to regret it. Best ticketing service app I've ever used. Check out Game Time today. Link will be in the comments and description to download the app right now. Okay, here's where things get interesting with kind of this threading of the needle scenario with McCarthy, Ben Johnson, etc. If the Lions win on Saturday night, you cannot talk to Ben Johnson until at least Monday, January 27th. That would be the Monday after Championship Sunday. There is no talking to candidates who are still in the playoffs between the divisional round and the conference championship round. So that would apply to Aaron Glenn as well. Potentially other coaches on other staffs also. So from a Bears perspective, forget your perspective, forget mine. Do you want to wait it out with Ben Johnson, or do you feel strongly enough about Mike McCarthy, or frankly, someone else, maybe Todd Monken blows you away, where you don't want to wait on Johnson, where you say, you know what, we like Ben, we're very interested in Ben, but we don't want to potentially wait a couple of weeks here. And by the way, there's a scenario where he wouldn't talk to anyone until after the Super Bowl. Now, I think he'll talk to teams between the championship round and the Super Bowl in that first week before Super Bowl week starts, but that is not a guarantee. So here's what I would say. If you really want Ben Johnson, he's still my number one guy, although if they end up with Mike McCarthy, I'll be perfectly happy with that. You need to be rooting for Washington on Saturday. You need the Lions to lose and Ben Johnson to free up and really ramp up his interview process to become a team's next head coach. Like, I think that's what you guys should be rooting for on Saturday night. Washington to knock out Detroit, because if they don't, it's going to be a waiting game. And that's, if you're strongly that he's your guy, then you'll do it. But the risk, of course, is you lose your number 2 or even your number 3 candidate to other teams willing to press forward in those situations. And then you may not even get Ben Johnson. Like, there's no guarantee. Now, if you feel strongly about how the first interview went, you feel strongly about the communication you've had with his agents, his reps, okay, yeah, wait it out. But ideally, Detroit just loses. And if you really want to get this guy, you can press forward starting on Monday morning. And something else to consider with all this as well when it comes to hiring a head coach. And it's not ideal, but like Todd Monken said, it's really just the setup that all these teams and coaches have to deal with. The sooner you hire a head coach, the sooner you can start assembling a coaching staff. Now, a lot of these candidates are going to have guys that, they have verbal agreements with, hey, if I get this job, you're coming with me, this, that, and the other. But assistant coaches are waiting as well. Like, you're already seeing defensive coordinator candidates interview with the Falcons, interview with the Colts. Like, they're going to take jobs if they're available, more likely than not. So the longer it takes to get your head coach, the longer it takes to build your staff, which means quality coaches are being nabbed up by other teams. Now, I think the NFL should fix this. I think they should go to a system where you can fire coaches whenever you want, but no coaches can get hired until the Monday after the Super Bowl. I think that would be fair game for everyone, because what happens is you basically get punished the further you go in the playoffs if you're an assistant coach. Like, Ben Johnson gets punished for winning games with the Lions. That's pretty silly that is the setup, but that's the reality of the situation. And so, again, I'm still in the camp where I would probably wait things out, but I think it depends. How do you feel about a third guy? Like, let's say the Bears top 2 are Ben Johnson, but they're worried that if they wait out Ben Johnson, McCarthy's just going to go to the Saints. Like, the Saints will be like, hey, we'll just offer you the job. And then the Bears call Mike and say, hey, we're waiting on Ben. And he says, well, I'll give you 24 hours, but if not, I'm taking the Saints job. Because he could do that. Cachet. He absolutely could go that route. So do they feel comfortable enough with the Todd Monken? He interviews today. Do they feel comfortable enough with the Brian Flores? He interviews tomorrow. Do they think Cliff Kingsbury is someone they can convince? Really comes down to that. If there's a big drop-off after Johnson and McCarthy in the Bears' eyes, I could see them just saying, you know what, we'll just hire McCarthy. We know he's going to be able to hire a good staff. We'll just go in that direction. But if they like a couple other guys, I could see them waiting it out on Johnson. But again, go Washington, go. That's what I say. All right, comment below. Will the Bears hire a head coach next week? Yes or no? If the Lions lose, I'd say guarantee they get a head coach next week, whether it's Ben Johnson or someone else. If the Lions win, comes a little muddier. Do you pass on Johnson or do you wait it out? That's the decision you have to make if you are the Chicago Bears. All right, that's going to do it for this edition of Chicago Bears Now. We will be back later today with another episode. Not sure what the content will be yet, but probably a coaching search update. If not, we'll have some sort of segment out there. So be on the lookout for that. My name is Harrison Graham. We will see you guys very soon. Bear down.